Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Williamson at Williamson NFL. And this was pretty bad. A little removed from the game, couple hours. I am recording this as usual on Sundays between the late games and the night game. So I have not rewatched or any of those things. These are still just initial impressions and things that would jot down while I'm watching the other games. And I'm having a pretty hard time coming up with a lot of positives for this performance. And maybe I'll cheer up a little in the next 24 hours. I tend to do that after a loss. But this was disheartening. And I feel like they lost all three phases. So I'm not going to go through the halftime stats. I might even stop doing that in general. But I did have some halftime observations. Oh, by the way, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. I should have mentioned that before, our buddies. So at the half, they had 14 straight wins before today when leading at halftime. Well, that streak is over. And a big note at this point was defensive injuries. Highsmith had already been ruled out. We knew Porter, Elliott, Harmon, etc. I'm not going to use that as an excuse, though. I mean, yes, it's a factor. I mean, of course, you start losing starters, and I just named several of them. Don't get me wrong. But it's still untimely defense over and over. But that needed to be mentioned. Again, these are my halftime thoughts. I thought, man, they're losing in the return game yet again. Kickoff returns are going the opponent's way yet again. But they had made some huge plays on defense. And Seattle missed a field goal, which you guys know I value the same as a turnover. And thought, okay, they're in decent shape. I mean, I think Seattle at the half was the better team, but they're in decent shape. Usually they come out and do really well in third quarters, at least last year. I'm still not thrilled with what I'm seeing, but let's go from there. I want to go through some final stats, and then I got a ton of observations here for you too. Rodgers ended up 18-33 for 203, a touchdown, 2 interceptions. One of interceptions was not his fault. That end zone one, obviously. Darnold, 22-33, but for 295. I mean, this was not a good passing game, and they threw for almost 300 yards against you. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Warren, there's a bright spot. No doubt. 14 rushes for 48. Okay. But 4 for 86 as a receiver. Cool. Walker, who I really like, he had 13 rushes for 105 and a touchdown and a catch for 13. JSN, who's a really good player, but he's like all they have to some degree, or at least I thought that. 8 catches for 103. I guess if he told me this morning he would end up with 8 for 103, I'd probably take it, but he sure seemed like he was getting the better of Ramsey and other D-backs pretty consistently. But what worried me more is Cooper Kupp, who I think is basically shot. And I didn't remember that Kupp and Ramsey were Rams teammates together, so maybe there's a familiarity there that worked in his favor, but I'm making excuses, to be honest with you. He ends up with 7 for 90. And again, I think he's pretty shot. That's not okay. It sure seemed by the TV copy, and maybe some of you guys were there, and I definitely can't wait to watch the All-22, that they were really, really, really shading and doubling Metcalf. And he only ended up with 3 for 20 and a touchdown. Had a drop or two. I thought today the folks, and hey, I'm more on this side than not, saying they need another receiver, have a pretty strong case after today. I mean, Metcalf, I don't know that can excel when getting drastic coverage ruled his way. And can the others step up? The answer kind of looks like no. Sacks, they lost that battle 3-2. Tackles for loss on run plays, though. This is something the Steelers have done well this year. They didn't allow any, but they did have 4 tackles for loss on run plays. That's 2 weeks in a row. They've tackled running backs behind the line of scrimmage, at least. They only created 13 first downs all day compared to 21 for Seattle. Third downs, 5 for 15. Not good enough. Seattle, 6 for 14. But it seemed better for Seattle, worse for the Steelers than 6 for 14. I was shocked when I typed that on my little Word document here. because it seemed like they converted a lot of big third downs, which again, timeliness on defense I haven't loved. Both these teams were 1 for 2 on fourth down. Total yards, 267. That's not great. It's not the worst thing we've ever dealt with over the last 5 years. But you allowed 395 to a bad offense. Bad offense. In yards per play, you lose it 6-2 to 4-5 to a bad offense. That's rough, man. Penalties, they each only had 2. Steelers had 15 yards, Seattle 10. Okay. Turnovers, 2 each. Time of possession wasn't horrible. You only lost at 31-17 to 28-43. But this was a team that time of possession was only 22 minutes last week. I mean, time of possession they were the worst team in the league in time of possession. That was one game, but still. EPA per play. I know that can confuse you guys, but it basically breaks down to how many points you produce every time you snap the ball compared to league average. Seattle was just above league average, like .0003, basically dead even Steven, where the Steelers were negative .202, which is pretty bad. It's not horrendous, but it's pretty bad. Explosive runs. You lost that one 4-1. Only one explosive run the whole day. Explosive passes. You lost that one 9-3. Tomorrow we'll get more into explosives, and it's been a real problem for the Steelers. Yards per drive. Just under 20 for the Steelers, 19.8. Every time you got a drive, you only got 20 yards, where Seattle was just under 33. Average depth per target. How far do you throw the football down the field? 6.2 for the Steelers. So that's still very low. Very low. Now, low doesn't always mean bad. That doesn't mean I'm hating on Rodgers or the offense or the protection, but they're all factors. 6.2 is very low, but there were some more downfield throwing. And I very much believe Rodgers can do that. But to who, I guess, is more the question. Steelers were at 6.2. Seattle was at 9.2. So they were like 50% further down the field per average target. Now, that doesn't mean you're better. Anyone could chuck 50-yarders up all day that aren't complete. But still, I think those numbers tell a lot of the story of what we saw in this game. Very few of them good for the Steelers. Football season's finally here. Time to check out the latest odds, futures, and win totals on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Think the Steelers are headed to the Super Bowl? Lock in your bets today. You notice I chuckled there. Whatever your plan, FanDuel Sportsbook delivers the latest lines, futures, and specials so you can join in on all the action.
Hey guys, if you're planning to see a Steelers game, use the Game Time app to get your tickets. You can snag new ticket deals before anyone if you set it into your app alerts. The app is easy to use. No surprise fees at checkout. You can see your seat view before buying, and you're getting legit tickets delivered on time. If you're not much of a planner, you can get last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. Lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app and enter the code DK Steelers into your app profile to get $20 off your first purchase.
Again, I got like 10, 12 notes here. Just want to throw them out there. Initial things I just jotted down. They won the special teams battle consistently last year. Boz, block kicks. Well, they lost it today, and I mean, I could have led with this, but it almost isn't worth bringing up the Johnson kickoff, just handing the opponent 7 points. What on earth is that? I mean, I know people are going to want to blame like Tomlin and Danny Smith. That's on the player, dude. I'm sorry. That's just dumb. I mean, come on. And him in general just seems like he is not helping the team at all. And frankly, I didn't like him as a kick returner. I don't think he's that type of player. It's like Najee as a kick returner. That's not what I want. Rodgers got hit a lot. That's adding up quickly, I have a feeling. You could see at the end of the game, he was holding his hand, the throwing hand. He's taken some big shots. And it's not all protection, but he does not defend himself well. This could be a story before you know it, and then look out, because there's a lot of times they just trusted Rodgers to put the team on his back, and he's not that guy anymore. And here's what's worse about it. The Seahawks blitzed on only 4 dropbacks. Only 4 times did they blitz in this game. And they generated pressure on 40% of the dropbacks when rushing 4 or fewer. So they're consistently getting pressure, and they're a very good pass rushing team. I told you that. Without blitzing. And the ball's coming out quick. Rodgers only completed 2 of his 10 pass attempts for 27 yards and an interception when he was deemed under pressure. So he did not perform well when pressured either. Mentioned this before, but just reiterate, Metcalf looked like he was doubled all day, and no one stepped up, including Austin. Not a strong case for being fine at wide receiver 2. Here's one positive, and I'd already kind of touched on it. It seemed like somewhat of a breakout game for Warren, and I thought their running back usage, which we'll talk about more tomorrow, was more in line with Warren and Gainwell's skill sets than it was in week 1. But the defense gave up big plays over and over. And oftentimes when you felt like you were ready to get off the field and try to mount a drive of your own, they convert on 3rd and 8. That just had that feel to it over and over. This is back-to-back games of giving up 30 or more points. They've now allowed as many 30-point games through 2 weeks as they had all last year. And I just feel like they're so reliant on splash plays. And they get a few, tip balls and Herbig's big play, rather than just solid down-to-down defensive consistency. You just don't see that very much from this team. They did have 2 more batted passes, and I feel like that it's kind of amazing to me because they're so unbelievably good at it. They just bat passes down all the time. And 2's a lot. Another nugget, Kenneth Walker led the Seahawks with 105 yards on 13 carries, with 11 carries for 97 yards, and a touchdown on coming on runs to the left, just like the Jets. Oh, by the way, you gave up 30-plus points to the Jets and Seahawks, who I gave the Jets a lot of credit yesterday, but going into the year, everyone that does what I do for a living would have those 2 as 2 bottom 10 offenses. Anyway, Walker gashing the Steelers to the left, to the defense's right. And Watt only aligned on that side, the defense's right, only 4 times when they ran the ball that direction. So everyone's just running away from Watt. It's that simple. I don't know if they're running at Hayward, but they're running away from Watt. Especially when Highsmith's out, you're going to run at Herbig, who I'm a big Herbig fan, but that's just not his bag. Watt's a stud versus a run, but they just run the other way. I mean, it's 2 teams in a row with a very, very left-handed, left-sided running game. Again, the defensive injuries, yes, it matters, of course, but I'm not going to say that's the excuse for this. Like, if they were perfectly healthy, they'd have shut him out. I mean, no. So, Darnold, 2.71 seconds time to throw. That's his 2nd quickest in a game since the start of last season. So again, teams want to get the ball out of their hands quick. I mean, even Fields, who doesn't do that at all, was sped up a little bit. They do fear the Steelers' pass rush, but if it's coming out quick, it doesn't matter as much. And he completed, actually, 51.5% of his attempts came out in under 2.5 seconds. It's really hard to get home in under 2.5. And on those quick hitters, it was to JSN, it was to Cooper Kupp on 37.5% of those attempts. And they had 102 yards between the 2 of them when the ball came out in 2.5 seconds or less. So they don't even have time to run deep downfield on those routes. I mean, those are quick hitters, break a tackle, or 8 yards here, 3rd and 6, you get 7. And we saw a lot of that today, middle of the field. And a lot was on Ramsey. It was a big game by Herbig. Really good to have him back. I get it. I'm reaching for, again, I opened this podcast saying I'm reaching for positives, but that's one. I don't understand punting on 4th and 1 at midfield. And I forget how Coach Tomlin described it in his press conference, but it was an unacceptable answer. Something about the defense being injured. I think on 4th and 1 at midfield in that situation, you have to go for it. And once again, I thought they were way too conservative, or he was way too conservative on his 4th and short calls. The league is going for these things now. You can't be the one just punts every time. They were, again, beaten, in my opinion, in all 3 phases. Where do you start? I mean, like, running game a little better, I guess. Was the run defense a little better? I guess, but not great for either. Looks like we have a high ankle sprain situation for Loudermilk and Highsmith. We know that will not be a short-term injury. Frankly, I don't mind about Loudermilk. I'm sure he's a swell guy. I don't want anyone to get hurt. But I think the more you can play Black and Ukele and maybe even Lee, the better. And Harmon, I assume, will be back semi-soon. 2 last nuggets were you're not going to be back in a home game. Well, you won't be at Acrisure Stadium again until week 6. It's a long stretch, so you're going to have to win away from your home stadium. Obviously, I'm talking about the Ireland game. That's a home game, but you're not going to be here. You're not going to be in Pittsburgh. And then lastly, kind of insult to injury situation. I gave the Jets a lot of praise last week. Boy, they got a good young core. Best Fields has looked. I like their O-line. Sauce, Quinnen Williams, their edge pass rushers. They probably were the worst looking team in the whole NFL on Sunday. They were horrible in week 2. Which, hey, they're totally different games. They're playing the Bills. We know the Bills are good. But it doesn't exactly make the Steelers win in week 1 look as rosy as it did 2 days ago. You know what I mean? I mean, you'd like the Jets to be like, oh, that's a good win in New York. Because really, the Jets, I thought, as we talked about, were even a better team than the Steelers on a down-to-down basis, but not in some key areas. I'm not saying the Steelers deserve to lose. But that's a pretty equal fought game, and there was a lot of problems with the Jets game, and the Jets looked terrible today. That's not a great feeling. It's not a great look. All right, everyone. Maybe I'll be a little cheerier tomorrow, but I am struggling to find things to get excited about. Not only especially from this game, but over the course of 2 weeks, there's big worries. All right, take care.